I thank my Lord for that answer. It was a fairly simple question. But does my noble friend understand the delay and constant difficulty in giving straight answers to questions about the guidance gives a strong impression that the government is being held to ransom by a tightly knit group of politically motivated peers and MPs who do not accept the Supreme Court judgment as stated by the rule of law, and one is entitled to ask, where has the rule of law gone?
No, I don't recognise that because it's not true. Any suggestion that the government is delaying the code, I think, is both totally inaccurate and unhelpful. This is a long and complex document, and we are carefully considering it. And frankly, it would be catastrophic for single-sex services, which have always been supported by this government and this party, to implement guidance that wasn't legally sound and then place them in legal jeopardy again. That is why it is vital that we get this right. We have always been clear that the proper process needs to be followed, which includes understanding the potential impact on businesses, public functions and services. And of course, understanding impacts is a routine and regular aspect of decision-making. It is not a delay tactic.
For the avoidance of doubt, will the noble lady the Minister confirm that the law is as determined by the Supreme Court judgment? Any code of practice is guidance.
Yes, I'm very happy to confirm that, as has been the Prime Minister. And to be clear, that the ruling of the Supreme Court in relation to the For Women Scotland case is clear. We do expect, both inside and outside government, it to be followed, and where necessary, people to seek specialist legal advice in order to enable them to do that.
On costs, could I ask what assessment has been made of the potential cost implications for employers and public bodies, and how the government is ensuring that the code doesn't inadvertently require expensive or disproportionate changes to facilities or service delivery?
Well, I don't believe that it will, but of course, understanding costs is a routine and regular aspect of decision-making, as I suggested. And this is a long and legally complex document which will have an impact on service providers up and down the country. And rightfully, we are carefully considering it and have asked the EHRC not to carry out a full regulatory impact assessment, but rather to help by providing information on costs to ensure that a full impact assessment is not required, but so that ministers can take a fully informed decision.
My Lords, I declare for the final time an interest as Chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I'm sure the House will be delighted to hear that this is my final intervention on this matter. But I just wanted to explain, for the information of the House, the very important point made by both Lord Rooker and the Minister. It is simply this, that the code was provided to government on the 8th of April before the Supreme Court ruling. Since the Supreme Court ruling, only 10% of the code has changed. We're now coming up to 8 months since 90% of the code was reviewed by government, and government responded with suggestions to those different protected characteristics and aspects. It's only 10% which has been with the government since the 4th of September. My final point is that the Minister makes an important point about the law not being about the cost, the regulatory impact. The bottom line is, since this is the law of the land, the impact of costs will be far higher if we litigate through the courts, case by case, public body by public body, duty bearer by duty bearer.
Well, I wholly agree with the noble lady on the last point, which is precisely why I think it is important that we consider as is laid out in law, in the Equality Act 2006, appropriately, the code. And she is right, of course, as I've outlined. The code covers more than the protected characteristics of sex and gender reassignment. But of course, it was on the 4th of September that the updated code, post the For Women Scotland case, was submitted to the government. And for the reasons that I've outlined, I don't think it's unreasonable for government to take the time to consider this appropriately, to consider, as it's expected to do by the burdens process put into place actually by the last government, the potential impact of that on providers, and for us to work to do that in a way that will safeguard providers in protecting all of the protected characteristics that the code... I haven't finished yet. And can I, in concluding, take the opportunity to thank the noble lady for her work at leading the EHRC. And I suspect that this won't be the last time that she asks questions about this issue in this House, and nor should it be.
Number of issues. As the whip. My Lords, I'm sorry, we'll hear from the Labour and then we'll hear from the Tories.
As the whip for the Equalities Act of 2010, can I ask my noble friend, the Minister, if she can clarify the next steps in the statutory process and how the government is going to ensure that when the code returns to Parliament, it will be legally sound, proportionate and practical for those who will implement it?
Well, I thank my noble friend not only for that question, but for her history of work in this particular area that she's outlined. As I suggested earlier, I don't think there is any benefit to anybody, and particularly those who most need the clarity of the application that the code can bring, for example, to lawfully provide single-sex spaces for women, to sidetrack the correct and careful process that the government is following. The government is following the process for laying the code in Parliament, set out in the Equality Act 2006. The Minister for Women and Equalities is considering the EHRC's updated draft code, as I've already outlined, and if the decision is taken to approve it, the Minister will lay it before both Houses over a 40-day period, as per the process set out in Section 14 of the Equality Act 2006.
My Lords, on the 5th of November, the noble Baroness, the Minister, was asked by Lord Pannick, does the Minister agree that today it is the obligation of all persons, whether they're private or public, to comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court, whether they agree with it or not, and without waiting for guidance? The noble Baroness, the Minister, helpfully responded by saying, I agree. So the government has said it supports the Supreme Court's ruling. The EHRC's updated guidance reflecting that ruling has sat with ministers for almost 3 months. Can I push the noble Baroness, the Minister, a little more to say, when will it be published? Every week of delay fuels confusion over a legally settled issue and leaves service providers without the clarity they need. So will it be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or even better, will it be very soon?
Well, it will be at the point at which it is we have fulfilled the process that I've already outlined to the House today. It will be at the point at which we can all be confident that what we're providing in clarifying the application of the law is something that will support providers in delivering for all those with protected characteristics, which is, of course, the role of the code. But the noble lady is right. I was clear in response to the noble Lord Pannick about the clarity of the law and the requirement for all to be following that at this point. That is the position taken by the Prime Minister in the last week, and that's what everybody should be doing.
Does the noble Baroness agree that the unclarity at the moment arises not from the judgment of the Supreme Court, but from the rushed and muddled unclarity of the code provided by the EHRC? And does she agree that we must now make sure that we do not inadvertently create an undefined third category that could be difficult for providers to deal with?
Yeah.
Well, I think the theme of my responses today to the questions that have been asked is precisely to try to avoid, to follow the legal and correct process here, to avoid legal uncertainty for providers in the application of the law and the use of the code in doing that, because it serves nobody. It serves none of the people who people understandably in this House and more broadly feel passionate about, if this government is rushed by political considerations into publishing a code which will not do the job that it needs to do for the most vulnerable people. And that is at the heart of the process that we are following, and that's at the heart of our commitment to serving those people. Yeah.